You don't understand how that makes me feel. I wish you could spend a day in my shoes. These are common phrases that people in their marriage make to one another when they don't understand one another. In today's episode, we're talking all about sympathy versus empathy, how that impacts your ability to communicate with each other. Let's get into it right now. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. We're so excited you've tuned in today on the Home to Haven podcast. This is your home for everything you need faith-based to communicate in your relationship. Let's dive into today's topic.
Yeah, let's get right into it. So we are going through our 5 tips to improve communication. So we're going to run through those really quickly and then talk about our 5th one today,
Which is empathy.
That's right. So first of all, we want to listen actively. That's very important. Number 2, be clear and direct. We're not being passive aggressive in our communication. It's clear and direct. Number 3 is to take responsibility for your feelings. We're not blaming the other person for making you feel a certain way. Number 4 is to actually schedule out that time for communication and put that as a priority. And then today we're going to dive in and talk all about practicing empathy. So really trying to see things from your partner's perspective.
It's important because, as I said in the beginning, a lot of times we hear all the times, you don't understand how that makes me feel.
Right.
You don't understand how I feel. Or, that'd be easier, or you'd understand if you were in my shoes.
Correct. So lots of people, they think they're the only ones that feel a certain way. We talked about in the episode a couple episodes ago that the other person is making them feel something. So we want to show our partner empathy, and that's a little bit different than sympathy. So let's walk through the definitions real quick as we get into some examples.
Okay.
So sympathy is when you see somebody typically in a negative type of feeling. So they might feel sad, they might feel angry, and you just acknowledge that. You might provide them with some comfort or some encouragement, but it's kind of surface level.
Could be.
Okay. And then empathy is really understanding that emotion, where they're coming from, how they're feeling, what is making them feel that way, what could possibly make them feel better, and things like that.
Well, the reason why I say it could be because there are people who lack sympathy.
Okay. Right. For sure.
And so sympathy is I'm acknowledging that this person feels a certain way, and I'm going to at least try to respond to that.
Okay.
And so neither one is better than the other. Neither one is wrong. One goes a little bit deeper in the fact that empathy actually takes on the actual feeling. Sometimes that can be good. So we want to use empathy in certain situations.
Okay.
We want to use sympathy in other situations.
Okay.
Right. And so again, all the advice and the coaching we give you and provide, we base it upon the foundation of God's word. We believe that's what ultimate success is, and that's what governs our lives. So in Hebrews 4:15, the Bible talks about how Jesus, our high priest, he was touched with the feelings of our infirmities. In other words, in one translation talks about how he gave us compassion and sympathy.
Right.
And so there's no situation or no pain or ailment or temptation that any humans ever faced that Jesus himself did not encounter while he was here on the earth.
Right.
So he went through everything.
Right.
And so as your husband, as your spouse, there's certain things I truly will never understand because I'm not in your shoes every single day.
Right.
But when we're communicating, it can't always be one-sided. And I'm only standing from my vantage point.
Okay.
I've got to stop. I've got to slow down and say, okay, let me try to understand, why is she feeling this way and what causes her to react this particular way, and come out. My dad had a conversation with me. This is many, many years ago.
Okay.
And when I was on staff, and he'd say, you're only seeing things from your point of view as, creative director. Come on to my side of the desk where I'm watching budgets and I'm trying to get these things going on, and I'm dealing with 5 people counseling today. 4 of them wanted money, and then you come in here so try to understand the things that I'm going through as well.
Right.
That'll really help in our relationships.
So you mentioned Jesus has already experienced those things.
Yeah.
Anything that we could possibly feel here on earth. And so we can take comfort in knowing that we can always turn to him because he knows what we're feeling, right?
100%.
Now, would we relate that same thing? You mentioned a little bit to our partner. Can we always turn to our partner and expect them to have empathy? You said that you might not know exactly how I'm feeling, but even if you don't know exactly how I'm feeling, can you still show me empathy?
Again, I believe part of it is the starting point is to attempt to.
Right.
And that goes through communicating and having these heart-to-heart conversations. The example easy I can think of is, sympathy is I can be like, man, Jennifer works hard, or I see her, man, it must be something. I know you work hard with those twins,
Right.
right? So I don't really know, but I see you doing all these things. It's only until I have the kids for a day by myself.
Okay.
And you got to get them dressed. You're constantly repeating yourself. And then you got to get them dinner. And then we got to go back and forth with somebody wants one thing. The other person wants another thing.
Mm-hmm.
They got to do laundry. Oh my gosh. Like I didn't realize
Right.
she goes through this and this is daily, right? This is just one day. So I can empathize a little bit,
Right.
but it still doesn't grasp the whole scope because I'm
Right.
not doing this every single day,
Right.
24/7, 365.
Right.
So again, the empathy is just the starting point of, okay, now I can respond a little bit differently. Now I know maybe not to approach you immediately when you get home because, oh yeah, she's done with 50 gazillion things that day. Let me let her breathe.
Right.
And now I can start relating to you on a more deeper level versus that my zone.
Right. Right. And when you have a little bit of experience in what somebody else is going through, like you mentioned, if you step into that role for a quick minute, you might be able to provide a little bit more empathy. But if I would come to you and try to communicate that situation, what would be the best approach that I could say? Dealing with 2 kids all day long, every day, being, stay-at-home mom, that's really tough. That's a lot on my shoulders.
Sure.
Do you think just those words and communicating with your partner, if you do it in a great way, would fully get that across?
That's a great question because, and again, I think part of it is how you are communicating. We've talked about tone. We've talked
Right.
about timing.
Mm-hmm.
And so all the time we've heard, I'm working hard. I'm
Right.
doing this.
Right.
I did this for the children. I did this. I did this for you. Da, 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 da. And we're just going down our resume of the things that we've done. And the other person's getting defensive because now it's a competition of
Right.
pow, pow. I did this. You know,
Right.
right? And whoa. Bring it down.
Right.
And so we can phrase it by saying, okay, can I share with you this load of responsibility? So not complaining in any way, but I get up at 5:30 in the morning and I get myself ready. And then I go at 6:10 and I start getting Adley ready and then Jaden ready and da. So I'm sharing all this because if you could help with getting breakfast ready while I'm doing those things, man, that would just take a load off me. Or if you could help load the car, that would enable me, right? And that's just helping
Yes.
me see things from
Right.
your point of view versus I need you to help me. You need to do your part and pick up the slack.
Right. It's a totally different way to communicate that. And I think that's extremely important to be able to tell the other person, like you said, in a nice way, not defensive, not demanding. And even if you don't fully understand or you're not able to put yourself in their shoes to really understand their situation, I think it's important just to listen to what they're saying because it doesn't matter if you fully know what it's like. If you hear your partner saying like, I'm struggling in this area or I need a little bit of help, even if you don't know what it's like, at least you can respond to that if you're in a good place of
Sure.
communication.
And that's where it comes into really depending upon God because we just read how he's been touched with their feelings. So Lord, help me understand, help me see this from their perspective, help me to hear
Right.
what they're trying to say, right? And so if they're being vulnerable and sharing with you those things, great. And if you're not getting it, okay, do your best, but also depend upon the Lord to help you and to reveal those things to you. Now let's bring it into a practical
Yes.
example where you might not understand the nuances of what I see things and the weight upon me as a
Right.
husband. So I'm feeling pressure to provide for my family, make the correct decisions.
Right.
I've got work things going on. I may have, other things and obligations going on. And so all this is going around and circulating in my brain.
Yep.
And so you may be saying, you're not spending enough time with me. You're not doing this, or we need this, that, and the other.
Right.
And men, we may not be as forthcoming, and we're coaching you on communicating. So we might not be as forthcoming in those things. And so how do you empathize with the husband instead of saying, when I get home, where have you been?
What took you so long?
What took you so long? And you have no idea what I have
come from
that day. And that was a great example of someone who normally would have responded that way.
Okay.
And, her husband was about 2 hours late.
Right.
And he hadn't texted.
Right.
And so she was like lit up. She had to do dinner by herself. And she's like, I'm about to give him a piece of my mind.
Right.
Because he knows that. And she is a believer. And so she just felt the presence of God. And she felt God leading her to, when he comes home, make home a haven.
Right.
Welcome him as the priest of that house. Give him a hug.
Right.
Greet him with the love and support. And she did it. And he just melted in her arms.
Right.
And like, you have no idea what I faced today. Let me tell you what happened.
Right. And then he just pours his heart out like, hey, I just went through this really tough situation. So you're giving them, the world calls it the benefit of the doubt sometimes, that you're always looking for the good in the other person and not like the example.
Judge, jury, and execution.
Yes. And the example you just gave is like letting those circumstances determine how you're going to react, your emotions, because he's late or he didn't call or he didn't text. And so you're thinking of this checklist of things that he didn't do. And it's making you, in quotations, feel a certain way because it's not meeting your expectations or it's not even meeting what you agreed to do. But if you can put yourself in the other person's shoes, even if you don't know what they went through,
of course,
you're letting them come to you and be a place where they can be safe in there.
Or even if they failed to do something, I want to say failed, but they lacked to do something. Right. Maybe it was a mistake. Okay, well, let me try to come into their shoes of why that happened.
Right.
Instead of just going, you should have done better. Okay, I can see how that fell through. I
Right.
can see, she forgot, or I can see how this happened. Again, that's extending grace one to
Exactly.
another.
Yeah.
And it's being patient. Again,
Right.
we are human. No one is the perfect communicator.
Right.
I think you said one episode, Terrell is not going to get up every single morning in the best of mood, giving me 700 kisses with 12 dozen roses,
Right.
looking the part, smelling the part every single day. I always smell good with cologne,
Right.
and my hair's in place. Like, that doesn't happen.
Right. It's real life.
It's real life. So
Right.
extend one another grace and support and love and peace and share and understanding and move through things together. And again, communicate. One of the great examples, we got to wrap it up, is sometimes, I'll have to remind myself of this. I get a little agitated if I haven't heard from you in a while, or I'm thinking, what is she doing?
Like to respond to a text, right? Especially.
It's like, what is going on? Or especially if I called you or if I texted and then you texted immediately and then I'm needing a reply. And it's like, you just texted like 2 seconds ago. So it's like, okay, put a pause. Jennifer knows this about me. So there's got to be a good reason as to what's going on. Let me slow this down and give her the benefit of the doubt. And she'll respond and be like, hey, some cuckoo went to the back and forgot to order and it got mixed up and they had my phone in the back, whatever it was. Oh, okay. Had I rushed to judgment? And a lot of times arguments and disagreements come because we rush to judgment and we jump the gun. It's like, if you just listen, how many times have we heard that? If you just listen, it makes sense.
And also in that case, you had communicated what you were wanting or needing from me in those situations. So I knew that, because if you had never said that to me,
that's true,
I probably wouldn't know that, right? So I'm just doing what I typically normally do, or what I would do in any other situation. But you had specifically talked to me about that, not in a mean way or a bad way, like, hey, this is kind of, where I'm at. And so I'm a little bit like, that's high on my radar. I know like, okay, he feels this way. And so I want to make sure that I can respond to him quickly. So you had communicated that so that I can in turn act, that way as well.
Awesome. So as we wrap things up, you want to practice empathy. And one of those ways to do that is, again, just do active listening. And put a pause and say, okay, let me step into my husband's shoes, my wife's shoes, my fiance's shoes, and let me understand, okay, she's dealing with, if it's planning a wedding, and the reason why she's asking me all these questions is because she cares. It's because this means a whole lot to her. She really wants X, Y, Z. Okay, so that's why she asks me these questions. And, or the reason why he gets irritated is because he's thinking about budget.
Right.
How are we going to pay for this?
Right.
And he's got the honeymoon and, the down payment on the house, right? So all these things, we're coming together, actively listen and think, how does that make them feel in this situation? Hope you got something from today's episode of Practicing Empathy and Sympathy in your relationship. And it's a great help to you. We also have something else that can be of help to you in your communication for relationships.
That's right. We have a freebie for you. So if you have not gotten it yet, get it today. It's your relationship planning guide. And that's your starting point to really map out your month ahead, really plan out those date nights, plan out what you want to communicate, what you want to get better at in your relationship. So get that today. It's a free download.
Yeah. Some things you can do is when you map out a date night or you map out a conversation, like take time on your planner to schedule, hey, we're going to have a conversation this night. It's just about whatever. What we're talking about. We have all these podcasts and things. There's so many things, right? We can talk about empathy, sympathy. Let's talk about how do I intentionally listen to you. There's so many things. There's always something to talk about.
Always.
On these planners, like put that in there. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about what makes you tick. Let's talk about what little things like that can be a great asset to your relationship. So again, the link is in the description on YouTube. It's in the show notes in your podcast app. So click on that. It'll take you right to it. Take you 15 seconds. Get it today. Share it with a friend, and you'll be glad that you did. Thanks so much. If you got something out of today's episode, make sure you like and subscribe. Helps the algorithm push it out to more people just like you who can benefit from a topic. You can always, you can always copy, paste, and share. Thanks so much for listening and tuning in. We'll see you next week. God bless.